Welcome to Property Avenue WA, episode 18, would you believe? And the weeks just seem to fly by. I'm Tony Viner, he's Oscar D'Souza, and we try and do our thing with regard to real estate, not just real estate, but all things property in WA, a whole range of topics. We have, and we obviously encourage you to ask questions and any things that are on your mind about property. It can be anything. We're not suggesting we know all the answers, but we try and get experts in. This week, you've only got to put up with OD and I, unfortunately, because we don't have a guest this week. But we've had some fabulous guests. Last week, we had Dean Stonehouse, who is a regular follower, but also more particularly, and Laura. Laura's there. She's just said good evening.
Already.
Yep, already. She said hello.
Good evening, Laura.
We've got some regulars, and I actually spoke to a couple of people today, OD, who I should say hello. Hi, OD. How was your week?
I'm going to pretend I didn't hear you. Had a great week, mate. Or rather, the week's been great. Really, really busy like yours. I'd love to hear about the couple of people that you spoke to today. Well,
what happened was they don't always come on the chat line and send us questions, but they listen to us regularly and watch us regularly, and they were really impressed with the various information of the different guests. It was really nice to get a perspective from someone that we don't necessarily hear from. So it was really good, and it's nice to get that positive feedback.
Yeah, excellent. And just like what you said before, we're always encouraging of questions, whether it's now during the show or afterwards, or even outside of the show. Pick up the phone, have a chat. Always keen to chat anything real estate in WA.
Yep. One might say we're a couple of we're a bit passionate about property. Although we work in different fields, we're doing this for a reason. The other thing that I can also suggest while we're here having a very casual little chat is if there's a particular topic or something that you would like us to do any one week, or you'd like a guest of a particular field. It might be an interior decorator, it might be an architect, it might be a draftsperson, etc. We've got a few of these people on our books to have on as guests. Not always does it suit a particular time, so we're trying to fit in with those people on our calendar. But if there's something particular that you'd like to come on board or you'd like to listen to, can be anything associated with property, then by all means drop us a line or send us. You can go live now and let us know, and then we'll try and do that and get a guest on that specialises in that particular field. Anyway, everyone looks forward to this part of the show, which is Oscar's update. Oscar's update, OD's update. We want to know what's been happening in the world of real estate for the last week or so, mate. How's it going in Perth?
Really good, mate. We still continue to buck the trend of the rest of the country. So the state of WA is doing its own thing so far as real estate activity is concerned. Last week, Dean Stonehouse mentioned to me, well, why don't I actually get my stats up on the screen so then people can see what it is that I'm talking about. So thanks, mate. I'm going to take you up on your offer, but it looks like it's going to be next week because of our technological challenges that we've got. That all said, another strong week in real estate. I'm just going to whiz over and look at my computer. In terms of property sales, we know that a normal market in Perth, property sales through the metropolitan area is normally between 500 and 600 properties. So last week we sold, or rather the agents sold 716 properties. So again, we're up above what we consider a normal market. But remembering going back a couple of months ago, at the absolute peak, we touched 1,000 or just over 1,000 properties in sales in any one week. So we've dropped back over the last 2 months. And each week it's probably gone back between 50 and 75 properties. So we now find ourselves at 716 properties under offer as of last week. But again, that's still a increase on what we consider a normal market at 500 to 600 transactions.
Can I ask a question in relation to that? Is that perhaps because all of a sudden there is supply? Is that a bit of an issue? Is that having an impact on that perhaps?
Well, yes, and you've probably jumped the gun in terms of where I was going, but I might as well talk about it now. In terms of, is that to do with supply? Yeah, it's now to do with lack of supply, TV. And I'm working with a lot of real estate agents in property management, but also sales daily. And what's going on at the moment as a result of the activity that we've had post this lockdown COVID period is we've had so much activity of 900 or 1,000 sales a week, and we've had a reasonable amount of stock coming onto the market. But the demand out there at the moment is so strong. The number of people going to home opens is strong. The number of offers or multiple offers coming in on properties is strong, and ultimately we're not listing new properties as quickly as we're selling them. So there is just a shortage of listings out there. So I reckon that the fall that we've seen in the number of transactions progressively over the last 4 to 6 weeks is not a reflective of the market starting to quieten off. I really think it is because there's a shortage of listings out there. So that's a good question. So 4 weeks ago, so last week, 716 transactions, 4 weeks ago, 768, and same week last year was 529. So as I said, that's obviously a bit more reflective of a normal market. Properties listed for sale. At the moment, there's just over 10,000 properties through the Perth metropolitan area. 4 weeks ago, it was around about the same. So but that supply I think we're going to see dropping. But in comparison, the same week last year, we were at about 14,100 properties, in contrast to about 10,000. So we can clearly see that over 12 months, that supply has definitely dropped, or rather, it's definitely dried up. Rental market very quickly. Last week, we rented through Perth metropolitan area 922 properties. 4 weeks ago, it was 851 properties. So again, a really strong rental market. And in the same week last year, also when we had a strong rental market, 1,064 properties. So in and around that 1,000 properties per week in a very strong rental market is very typical. But the rental supply side probably tells us a lot more of the story. This time last year, we had just under 7,000 available rentals through the Perth metropolitan area. As at right now, we've got 3,362, so greater than a 50% drop. And over the last couple of weeks, that figure actually got much closer to around 3,000 rentals. So that's very low stock. We're leasing 1,000 properties a week, and similar to the sales game, we're just not listing as many as we're either leasing or as many as we're selling. So the market conditions out there for sellers or for landlords is really strong. Buyers or renters are really struggling, and that's the way that it's been for the last, or basically the last 2 or 3 months as well. I can't see any reason why those conditions are going to change. If anything, the supply side is just going to keep heading further south, and that's just going to make it a bit more difficult for those that are looking to either rent or to buy properties. That's basically the market.
Can I just, while you're on that, the bloke that showed off, remember last week we had a guest and he showed off, he thought he was funny when he showed us his scorecard and a golf ball that he got a hole in one with 39 years ago or something silly. He's asked the question, where are the people who need to rent coming from? Have we got an idea what's going on to generate this sort of increase in the market in that area?
That's a really good question, Mr. Hole in One. Look, I can tell you where they're not coming from, and they're not coming from interstate. We obviously know that. I also know. Well, no, because the borders are shut.
Oh, well, I wonder whether, one of the questions, one of the other people, one of our other followers being Laura, she sort of wondered if that's perhaps Eastern States people that are relocating here, like FIFO workers, for example, and saying, well, we need to relocate and get here. I mean, obviously got to be quarantined. Is that still, that's not a possibility?
Yeah. No, it is a possibility, but I don't think that's not the dominant driver of what's going on.
Yeah, okay.
But no, there definitely is a component of that. And it's an interesting thing just on that you raised. This is something that came up in my office last week. So far as people relocating over here from interstate, and they're relocating for work reasons, and when they come into the state, they obviously have to quarantine for 14 days. If they're renting a property from my office or any other office, what's the deal? Are they actually allowed to quarantine at their new property, or do they have to go into hotel quarantine? And
what's the answer?
I can't remember. I actually think, honestly, I can't.
Good God, man. Yep.
I dare say, so long as they are quarantining, it shouldn't really matter. I think the outcome with that one is so long as they can identify or stipulate to the authorities exactly where they're going to be quarantining, and therefore that can be checked over that 14-day period. I don't think it really matters whether it's a hotel or whether it is their new residence, because obviously people that are coming back into the state that lived in the state, they'd obviously be able to self-quarantine at their own property, and that should be no different if they're renting a house from anyone.
Mr. Hole-in-One, Acker Dean Stonehouse, he made a comment that he is aware that there are people moving from the country to city for work reasons. So that may also be an influence.
I think that's the case. Another factor as well, I think there's a few reasons why it's just so strong. I also think there is a level, or rather I know that there is a level of uncertainty amongst people, and they don't know what to do. And right now, if they're not able to buy because there's not the stock for them to buy, or they're uncertain about what the next 12 months looks like economically and for their employment, it's a much easier thing for them just to rent. Maybe there's some people out there that know that the selling market at the moment is really, really strong. So if they think that that's a good time to sell and maximize, the sort of outcome they're going to get there, maybe they don't want to buy in that same market as well. So instead they might rent for 12 months. If we go through a tough economic period and that means house prices fall, maybe the psychology is that they'll sell in their really, really strong market, but if they delay buying for another 12 months, their line of thinking might be that they might be buying in the downward market, which would be perfectly timed. So I don't think it's any one thing in terms of the demand for the rental market. I think there's a number of things that are fueling it.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because again, I read an article during in the past week or so where there was a reference that asking rents for houses have dropped 2.4%. Well, these are the figures that I read, 2.4% over the past year, and the unit side of the rental side of it is down 4.6%. But Perth has actually quite the opposite. So in Perth is one of the few cities where rents have actually increased over the last quarter, rising by as much as 1%, and that's in the July quarter. So that's interesting. That's obvious because of the demand.
Yeah, mate, look, I had an example just today in my office where one of the property managers was talking to me about the rental for a unit, wherever, West Leederville or wherever it was, a little one better, and it was always getting $100, $185 a week, and it's been that way for a few years. However, they've now looked at the supply of other rental, so the property is now ready to be relet. They've now looked at the supply of other rental properties that are comparable to it, also in the complex of units itself, and there's practically nothing under $200 a week. Now, if this unit was getting $180 a week, but now we're sitting there going, well, we know the supply is low, we know the demand's strong, and everything else is asking $200 a week plus, and people are falling over themselves to get it. My advice, obviously, to the property manager is, well, we've got to do the right thing by the owner, and that is to maximise the rental return. So we should be getting $195 or $200, maybe even a bit more. In the space that time from the previous tenant vacating to where the rental market is now, that's going to be comfortably $20 a week, and I know we'll get it. That's 10% right there, or even between 10 and 12%. So the usual story, sometimes the figures that you read, they might be eastern states figures, they might be national statistics or whatever. They often don't tell the full story. So we've just got to get our head around what the full story is. And with the way that our rental market is at the moment, if we looked at where things will be 12 months from now, I think with what I'm seeing so far in the rental market, a double-digit growth rate in 12 months' time from now, I don't think is unthinkable. It's really,
right. Yep.
yeah.
And that's interesting too when we talk about the unemployment levels that are going on. I suppose that's got to have some impact on what's going on with rentals. So that, there's still lots of talk, isn't there, about JobKeeper and JobSeeker and when that stops and what that happens. And one of the things that I overheard, and I didn't get the full discussion, but I picked up the short of it. There was a suggestion, and it was a real estate person suggesting that the real estate market activity is perhaps due to the lull. It was along the lines that there was a lull in March and April, which there was in WA, where that was the world of unknown, as we all know. And is it what we're experiencing is sort of a catch-up period at the moment? But from my observation, I think it's more than that. I don't think it's so much a catch-up. It's as though perhaps people are identifying now's the time to do whatever they're going to do, because they're probably not going to. They've probably got a bit more money in their kitty because they're not going on big holidays and they're not spending on big ticket items. So hang on, let's go and build, or let's go and do renovation, or better still, let's sell and go and buy something else. Maybe that's the scenario that's in that market.
Yeah, look, I reckon you're onto something there, TV. And if we try, I know it's a challenging thing now, if we try and take COVID in WA, if we take that out of the equation, so that 2 or so months where we really had a drop in activity, no home opens, no one, we were pretty much housebound. If we take that 2 months out of the equation and we go back 12 months from now, so if we look at even an August, September, maybe October period, our local market actually started to turn a bit of a corner and we started to see some increase in activity, and we started a bit of a run towards the end of the year. That absolutely continued in January and February, and all the real estate agents were going in WA, they're going, wow, finally it's WA's time for us to actually have a more buoyant, active market. So it was very exciting. But then, of course, end of March came and COVID came and threw a massive, massive spanner in the works. And that really stopped our market solidly for a couple of months. And from that time, from mid-May, end of May, we've just gone straight into boom territory. So, but not forgetting, we were on a pretty steady upward trend anyway, so far as activity was concerned. But we stopped dead over that COVID period. So my discussion with agents, just like yours as well, is that we were already strong at the start of the year. There was a lot of pent-up demand from that March, April and early May period where there were buyers around, but they just couldn't buy anything because they couldn't get in and see them. There wasn't home opens, there wasn't real estate agents working, and we were housebound. So then when we were allowed back out and we were allowed to have restrictive social distancing and everything, and we could have home opens again, we not only had those people that were going to be buying in May, June and July, but all those people that couldn't buy in March and April, there was a flood of them as well. And that created an even more competitive environment for the limited stock that was there. So I really think in terms of a catch-up, I think that's exactly what it was. And yeah, we'll just wait and see where the next couple of months goes. In particular, you did mention JobKeeper and JobSeeker. The other thing that's going to be very interesting in the rental market is the moratorium on evictions, which at this point in time finishes on the 29th of September, which is only 40 odd days away. So it's not really that far away. And at this point in time, the moratorium finishes then. And what happens to the rental market for those COVID affected tenants, those tenants that have not been paying rent or that are behind, and that moratorium technically finishes? Well, what's that going to look like in the rental market? And will there be a shift of the goalposts? between now and 29th of September that actually extends that emergency or moratorium period. So I think a lot of people are thinking, yep, of course there's going to be some extension, but that is yet to be determined.
And so with regard to that, you know, and that's perhaps, I know, I read an article with regard to Commonwealth Bank. I think we raised this last week with Dino, and they had a sort of press release with regard to the property market, and reference to job seeker and or more particularly job keeper. I mean, what happens there then? I mean, we've got an issue that all of a sudden people simply cannot. Okay, that moratorium is in place, but come September, that's going away. Where's that going to put the marketplace? Because then you're going to have landlords that are going to go, well, hang on, I'm not getting my rent, and these people just don't have the capacity. They don't have a job. I mean, we talk about, you know, we talk about people that have kept their jobs, and of course, kept their jobs, don't have big ticket items to spend on, don't have their overseas holiday available to them. So they're going, okay, there's more money to reduce debt, or there's an opportunity for me to buy or do something. But of course, the other side of the coin is what's going to happen when that happens. I suppose that's the mystery, isn't it? That's the $1 million question, as we say.
Yeah, it is. And I think, not forgetting that the moratorium on evictions was a federal government-led thing. So that wasn't just WA, that was around.
No. Yeah.
And so I don't know what's happening in Victoria, but I suspect with the lockdown that they've got, there has to be, there's no question that they can't evict tenants that are COVID affected up until the 29th of September. And I really suspect moving forward, it's not even going to be a question. There absolutely will be an extension of that moratorium. But should that actually apply to all the other states? I don't know, because if Queensland isn't affected, if WA isn't affected, well, at some point in time, that moratorium needs to be evicted, and it needs to be lifted. And tenants that are not doing the right thing or that are struggling or whatever, like you said, the landlords have got to start getting their money, because the only thing that has saved the landlords is obviously the flexibility and support and leniency of the banks. But as we know, and we touched on last week, that needs to draw to a close by, I think, January next year, which is only a few months away. So it's not going to take long for that to happen. And I think it was CBA that were outward in saying there's going to have to be some hard decisions. We're not going to be in a position to just say give it another 6 months, because they've got their debt obligations as well. So what's going to happen? I don't know, TV. I mean, there's going to be pain, or there's going to be more pain. And so far, I think a lot of that pain has been band-aided, which has been really good and really helpful. But the next 6 months might be more painful than the most recent 6 months.
Yeah, and you know, you still, I mean, I know COVID has become a daily conversation. It's a daily thing in the papers, it's a daily thing on the TV, it's a daily thing on the radio, on the news. But it is real, and as much as there are people that are sort of focusing on the conspiracy theory, as if you had to watch the 60 Minutes, I think it was, on TV last weekend, where, you know, they had nurses and whatever and said, this is real, this is not conspiracy, there's no conspiracy here, this is you know, come and work with us for a while and we'll tell you whether you'll see there's not a conspiracy. But of course the issue is that what this is going to do, and the eventual flow-on effect, that's the part that's intriguing as far as where the business world's concerned, not just the property world. So it is a bit of a guessing game. It is exciting with what's going on at the moment, but I still think we've all got to be just be aware that, you know, we've probably got to be a little careful, a little conservative, and not just assume that it's not going to happen and it's not going to have a problem, because as we're just saying, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen down the track with regard to rental moratoriums. We don't know what impact that's then going to have on landlords, and so the domino effect, isn't it? You know.
Look, I would have thought that, just on closing on that topic, but I really would have thought, given the uncertainty of the economy over the next 12 months, I actually thought that would create a bit more conservatism in the the buyers out there that are looking to buy properties,
Yeah.
which is not me, but I reckon if I'd be sitting there thinking, well, I know what I can borrow, I know what's in the bank and all that, and I'm prepared to. I just want to get the next house or the unit or whatever it might be. But me personally, I reckon I'd probably be going, but what do I reckon the economy is going to do over the next 12 months? So that would create a bit of conservatism in me. That is, maybe I'm the only one in the state that actually thinks that way, because with the buyer activity that we've got and the reports from the real estate agents, there is many people going to home opens. There's multiple offers coming in on properties. Often that can be in the first week that the property's on the market. So that conservatism that I'm talking about, it's not showing its face at the moment, that's for sure.
Hey, listen, going back a couple of steps, but Dino's been a bit proactive, but he's just had an example in the last 14 days. A leadable 2-bedroom unit, previously leased 12 months ago at $425 a week. They then asked asked $440 for the new tenant. They had 16 registered viewers and leased at $450, which was $10 a week above the asking. So that's the sort of thing that was happening back in 2008, 2009, 2010 sort of thing, wasn't it? Remember?
Yeah. And it's and even in the sales market, I'm hearing those similar sorts of stories for people that are selling properties at the moment.
Yep.
Where we are getting back to lots of interest, lots of genuine offers coming in, whether it be in the rental market or the sales market, and we're now in that territory of, I've just got to have it. I don't really have any other options. What do I need to do to get it? And is $10 a week more going to do it, or is $10,000 above the other guy going to do it? That is literally happening in the market.
Yeah. Remember last week we were talking, and you made an observation with regard to Geraldton, and it was below 100. I think you said on generally at its peak, it's like 120. Suddenly, first time and as long as we can remember, it's below 100 rentals available on the market. Have you got an update on that? Have you spoken to anybody in the last week about that?
No, I'm going to look at it right now because I've got my other computer in front of me. But just to be clear, so a normal market in the rental market in Geraldton was 160 to 180 properties. At its greatest oversupplied level, it hit 400 or like 420 or something. But last week it was at 98 properties available through Geraldton, which is something I have never ever seen or heard of. Right now, I'm just going to jump into realestate.com and
go on, keep going.
96.
Wow. Okay, so it's still at that level. Yep.
Yeah. No. So there's 96 properties available through the whole. That's not Geraldton, the suburb. That's Geraldton, the town. So through the whole of Geraldton, there's under 100 properties available, which is phenomenal.
It is absolutely phenomenal. And getting back to our reference about the the job keeper and things of that nature, and what that will do. Again, our finance guru, who was our guest last week, one Dean Stonehouse, some of the major lenders have started contacting borrowers, and I was aware of this myself actually, who have deferred loans to attain. They are now they've started contacting the borrowers who've deferred loans, and they are trying to ascertain or get an update on where the clients are at financially, where they're at employment-wise, and if they may need further help post end of current deferment. So already the banks are starting to be proactive in that area. And I think I read somewhere, was it National Bank, Commonwealth Bank, I think, but also National Bank, I think they were the same, was sort of saying, well, it's not just going to be automatic. We'll have to make an assessment of where the individual clients are at. I'm pretty sure it was National Bank. I read something similar. So already, if you've deferred your loan through this period for whatever reason, I'd suggest your banker has already been in contact with you to ask some questions.
Hey, TV, just a quick one, and this is a bit of an unusual one where we'll ask anyone that's listening to jot in a quick answer to this question, and that is I've come across a number of different people that have made use of the access to superannuation early, and that the last financial year, but then also the current financial year. I'd love to know a range of different things that either people have used that money for, or who they've heard other people have used that money for, because I reckon some of the answers will surprise you. There's the usual suspect of reducing debt, or just keeping the money there just in case, you know, for the rainy day. That's probably coming as well. But there's been quite a few things that I've heard where I go, wow, I didn't even think that people would be using the money for that. Most of the time, we're not talking about going on a quick holiday because we're a bit restricted with that. But yeah, so for any listeners that are out there, any of the curveballs that you've heard in terms of what people have been using their money for, would love to hear from you.
So when you say their money, in what money? You talking about superannuation money or their JobKeeper money?
No, I'm talking about superannuation money. So those that were COVID affected were able to, prior to 30th of June and also after 30th of June, I think they were allowed to make an early withdrawal tax-free of $10,000 from their superannuation account. My question is, what are the different uses that people have been using their superannuation for?
Already I've got, Laura's come back and said clearing debt, and one person she knows about heard about laid out to a new pool, put in a new pool.
New build?
A new pool, a new swimming pool.
A new pool?
Yep. Dino's come back and said he knows, he's got examples where people withdrawn super to have a deposit to buy a new home.
Yep.
And I'm not sure how serious this person is, but Judy has come back and said bought the new girlfriend a flashy new car.
Oh, really? But why do you think that person isn't serious? Do you know something about that?
Yeah, but I don't know about the girlfriend bit.
Right, okay.
Someone has suggested that Judy, did you get a new car? But Judy said no, it wasn't me. We do have some.
Just that, and Dean, I think mentioned about the using superannuation as equity for a new home loan or whatever it might be. I just would love to know in time, are there some sort of restrictions with that? Because obviously that's just an instant cash appearance in one's bank account, and obviously that's not going to be taken into account when it comes to serviceability. It's a little bit like the grant situation where they were talking about, well, what can you use those grants for, like when you're building, and where does that come into the serviceability of the debt, and where does that come in terms of your equity that you need to put into a loan? So I wonder if those same rules apply to your own superannuation contributions.
Yeah, and that's a question too. Dino, we know you're listening. I haven't been, as I said, I've been a busy week this week, and the Wednesdays just fly around. But I haven't had an update of where things are at. Remember last week we were talking about the respective grants, and there was still some issues with regard to the processing of those applications.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether that's been resolved, because remember we spoke to Dean about the fact that people going to build and they qualify, and I had a question asked of me this week whereby he is not an Australian citizen and therefore doesn't qualify for the federal grant, but his wife does, so they do qualify, so they get that 25. But one of the questions that came up, the other question was with the state amount, was what happens if there are three, so husband and wife and a third party are on the title who's assisting with the purchase of the property? What impact does that third person have with, now what was the situation? What impact does that have with them qualifying for the 20,000, which I've got to do some homework. But if someone's listening out there and knows that answer, we'd appreciate some comment, because will they qualify for the 20,000 and because it's intended to build their residential home, but we need to know what happens with that third person who's not actually involved and not going to reside in that residential home for the other party. So it's let's say it's mum and dad, and they've got one of their children who's on the title, who's contributed towards the purchase of the land or whatever, but mum and dad are building the house, and mum and dad are raising the money to build that house. Does that impact on the state? It's a little job that I've got to find out about. But if anybody's listening, if you've got the answer to that, we'd be interested to know what that stands.
I've got one more, because I know that we've spent quite a bit of time on first home buyers over the last couple of weeks, and there's one really important thing that I came across over the week that first home buyers need to be very wary of, particularly when they're talking about new builds in any of the suburbs. Example, Ellenbrook, any of the outer suburbs, whether it's Baldivis or maybe there's new subdivisions between Rockingham and Mandurah, or even south of Mandurah. So when people are looking at these new grants, and obviously the land market has gone gangbusters over the last 2 to 3 months because of the new grants, one of the things that popped up is banks have got their own risk profile in terms of where they're prepared to put their lending. And if there are areas on the fringe suburbs, often banks will actually say, well, either we're not going to lend in that suburb anymore, or in that postcode rather, because we consider it high risk, or they'll have a certain cutoff for the exposure that they're prepared to pay. So they'll basically say, look, we'll do lending in that area of up to 30 million or 20 properties, whatever it might be, but they'll have a bit of a cutoff so that they're not overexposed to a certain area if they believe that that area is at risk of coming back in value. So why this is important, and particularly for first home buyers, is whilst there's been a big, massive rush on to go and buy land, what people need to be aware of, and this is the conversation with Dean last week in dotting the I's and crossing the T's, you've got to make sure that when it comes time to building and when it comes time to your, the financing side, you've got to make sure that, how do I put this, that the bank isn't going to pull the rug out from underneath you, because if you've got the block and you're applying for the finance to do the new build, you've got your grants and all that sorted, but at some point in time, a bank, because not all of them are going to do it, but there will be some banks that say, oh, you know what, we're not prepared to lend in that area anymore. And if you've gone off and bought a block, and you might just hit a bit of a brick wall so far as the lending's concerned, not because of anything that you've done, but because of a bank lending, or rather a bank exposure decision. So again, it just goes back to what we were discussing last week in terms of, particularly for first home buyers, the best advice that they can get is to have a chat to someone who is independent and obviously experienced, so that they can give them the right advice that is going to make sure they don't run themselves into strife.
Yep. Which is an interesting point, because there was another thing that I picked up on. Apparently, as far as first home buyers are concerned here in WA, it's something like a 2.6% increase in the number of loans in the last 12 months for first home buyers, which obviously low interest rates is sort of you were talking earlier on about the fact of perhaps you're the only conservative one here in WA in the current market, but interesting to see the first home buyers are perhaps seeing it as an opportunity because of low interest rates. And of course, the price is right in relation to be able to get under that $430,000 mark where they're exempt of stamp duty, which can be a significant savings if you can get inside that sort of cap, if you like. I mean, there is still a concession if you buy from 430 to 530, I think it is the maximum. So there's a concession in duty, but when it up to 430, first home buyer is exempt fully from stamp duty. And that's interesting that stat is saying a 2.6% increase in the number of loans for first home buyers over the last 12 months. So it is a market that's moving.
Yeah, or I'm not trying to take the sting out of the market. I'm not trying to kill the excitement or anything like that. I guess my only point, particularly with first home buyers, is it's challenging at the moment out there because everything is in short supply. So you'll have a natural tendency to want to move quickly. But and so move quickly. All I'm saying is make sure that you are educated with some independent advice along the way, because you can get so caught up in just getting your name on the property or getting your name on the block, and you just want to make sure that you walk before you run, so that you just don't make a wrong move. And there's lots of independent advisors at your fingertips. It's worth your time lining up those ducks before you try to put your name on a property. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. And look, Laura's just made a comment here that she's got she knows someone there where they started the build process with the parents, and they were building a house before COVID, and they were all good to go. Everything's ready to go. COVID, of course, came from nowhere, as we know, or we knew it was happening, but we weren't aware of what impact it was having, as I call it, the unique world, the world of the unknown, as it was at the time. And the place they were going to build went into shutdown, like a lot of them did. And then a dad lost his contract work, and now they can't build, and they're stuck with the land. And they may not be able to even keep that. So there are situations that you've got to be real. And as much as we turn around and say, well, people that have kept their jobs and then suddenly they've got these resources that they would normally perhaps use to go and have on a holiday. I think there are still some things there that we can't kid ourselves as. I still think we're in a world of the unknown. As good as everything is, I think we've got to be just a little bit careful. And as you say, there's people like you and I, there's people out, there's finance brokers, and there's various other people out there that that are available to you. And sometimes we've got to be careful we don't get caught up in the emotion and ensure that the contract is protecting you. And I think Dean said last week, and I think we've had one of my other finance friends a few episodes back, said the same thing. We need to be careful when we do our contracts. When you do your contract, identifying who you're borrowing from, because if you just generalize it, you could be caught in a lending scenario that's not really for you. It might be okay now, but we've got to consider when you buy a property and you borrow, it's long term, it's not short term.
Yeah, yep. That's right, mate. I just glanced across and looked at the time, mate, and
I know.
Again, mate, I don't know if it's time.
I'm going to tell you just something. Did you know, talking about Perth, and don't forget our whole program is about property in WA, but Perth is ranked in the top 50. In fact, I think it's ranked 48 when I had a look at the research. Cities to live in the world we live. Singapore's number one, but we are in the top 48, and we're actual fact number one. I think the next there's a range of categories. It's not all about COVID, but it obviously is COVID impacted. But this study that was done, I think it might have been Adelaide was the next city, which was about 72. Don't quote me, but it was along those lines. It was quite a gap.
Well, I won't quote you, but so any idea who carried out that study? Because I always wanted to.
Yes, I do. It was done by a university of. Oh, I should have written it down, shouldn't I? But yeah, no, it was done by a university, a thesis, and I then Googled and got hold of that thesis and read it.
Did you?
I did. And
God.
Yeah, I've been busy. Admittedly, it was 4 o'clock in the morning, but I did read it. And it was done with them and Seek. You ever heard of Seek? Seek is sort of, they do. I'll make sure I'll do my homework. I'll write it down now, and I'll confirm where I got that info. But yeah, it was all done very legit. It wasn't someone that was just sort of trying to promote Perth. It was done and they had a range of. I'll confirm with you what the criteria was to tick those boxes. So, hey, listen. As you said, we thought we'd just sort of mosey along tonight because of, and we'd still like to get someone, and we'll follow that through if we can for next week, to get an idea of what's going up in the northwest. But as you know, I've been busy trying to sort out, not only look after clients and answer phone calls and whatever, and I've got a number of people. If you happen to be listening and you're one of those people that rung me and I still haven't rung you back yet, I just apologise and promise you I'll get back at some point in time. But look what I found. I found this book in my dear old dad who passed away, and I'm going to have a read of this. It's a history of real estate in WA since 1829, and this book, some of the stuff that I had a quick squeeze through, really interesting stuff. So I'm going to pop a few little bits and pieces about this as I read it in our upcoming. It's about WA, real estate in WA, and it's obviously a limited edition. And this edition that I've got is something like edition number 274. Yeah, now, I know that's useless information, but there you go. There you go. Hey, listen, the other thing I was going to ask you, we've got to finish with an if question.
Okay, yep.
Laura said, who wouldn't want to live in WA? And I think that's probably Clive Palmer, maybe. I know Clive wants to live here, doesn't he?
No. I think he wants to buy it. I think he wants to buy WA.
No, I heard that he's bought a property somewhere and he's already applied, or he's a member of the Royal Perth Yacht Club or something like that. Is it, or South Perth Yacht Club, something like that? Have you heard that?
No, I haven't. But just thinking out loud, I'm pretty sure Mark McGowan lives in Rockingham, so we should probably see if there's any properties that we can sell him in Rockingham. That might be maybe,
no, they get on well apparently.
They can have
I've
together.
said that 3 times now. Hey, listen, I know you're always listening. What is one of the most wanted areas in Perth? Is there a particular area that people are keen about? Are there popular areas that they're most wanted and demand for?
Yeah, the popular areas. I mean,
for next week.
Sorry, next week.
You want to do that for next week?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because we're going well for time. Because I've got a very important question. It's an if question. If someone wanted to understand you. And I will acknowledge, people, it's taken me a long time and I still don't understand him. But if someone wanted to understand you, what would they read? What would they watch? And what would they listen to?
Okay, so is that 3 separate answers you need from me?
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, what would they read if someone wanted to understand you and what you're all about? What would you think they'd need to read? What would they need to watch, and what would they need to listen to get to so they'd understand what OD's about? Is that a good question?
Hey,
is that a good question?
A ripper. That's a ripper. So what would they read to understand me? Okay, well, you know the Bible, not that.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I was going to say, hang on. Yeah, go on.
No, not the Bible. Yep. So what would they read to understand me? I know. They would read any edition of this year's motor magazine. Okay. Yeah, I'm a bit of a car person these days, and well, that's demonstrated by the 2003 Prado that I currently drive. So, what was the other one? What would they listen to?
Yeah.
What would they listen to so that they knew a bit about me? I reckon what would they watch? I reckon that one's probably going to be a bit easier. But what would they listen to? I know. And if for anyone who doesn't know the song that I'm about to say, plug it into Google or into YouTube and have a listen to this song. It's 12 minutes or 12 and a half minutes, the one song. And it's by John Butler or the John Butler Trio, and it's called Oceans.
Really?
It is amazing TV. Do you know what I'm talking about, TV?
No, I don't. And I've written it down because I'm going to go and check it out.
Please do. It is the best instrumental that I ever have heard. And in terms of learning a bit about me, and I don't know, hopefully when you listen to, I love listening to that song. I never, ever get tired of it. And it is 12 and a half minutes. And John Butler is amazing. So what would you watch in terms of something to understand me? Some sort of a movie that is about hardship and not giving up. So no matter what it is, you keep going. You never, ever, ever give up. And you just keep going.
Yep. Well, we tick that box. Because I'm along those lines. And I suppose the other thing to understand me is that anything that's involved top level challenging sport, so anything of that nature, that will sort of cover me, because I just love my sporty stuff, as you know, and I'm into that. And when it comes to what I read, I just really enjoy one of my best books. I don't know, you know who Kurt Fearnley is, don't you? Kurt Fearnley, wheelchair champion, but a champion bloke. He does a podcast now. He's done amazing things, and to read the Kurt Fearnley book, it'll bring a tear to your eye, but you'll also get to understand and admire this man even more so. So Kurt Fearnley was a brilliant wheelchair athlete. He's done the Kokoda Trail. He was born with a deformity in his legs, and he's someone that if there's heroes in the world, he's my hero.
Yeah, right. Excellent.
And so I just love to hear these people that, you know, I always say you put things in perspective, but there's some brilliant, I love those sort of stories where people have just, it's a bit like what you're saying, don't give up. That is a classic book to identify that scenario. And then when it comes to listening, it depends on the mood, but I love the sort of Fleetwood Mac type music, or the Bob Dylan type music, or the Jethro Tull. But one of my real specialties that a bit like you with Oceans, I'm a bit of a Stairway to Heaven. That's one of those.
I never got that. Like everyone goes Stairway to Heaven, and it's never ever excited me where I'd want to listen to it more than once.
I think it's just the music. Laura said, bringing up boys, watch that, cooking shows, and listen to any music, because I'm a living music box.
Yeah. I wonder if anyone knows the song that I'm talking about, the John Butler song.
Well, I bet she'll go and listen to it now.
Good.
And Dean Stoner said, yes, he knows Kurt Fearnley is an amazing Australian, and he truly is. But if you are listening, if you want to go and listen to a podcast, he does a great podcast with a different thing. Mate, we've got to go. It's time is flying. I didn't think we'd go this long today. Absolute pleasure. For those that have been a part, Laura, Dino, and any others that haven't sort of put on our chat thing but have been listening, thanks a million for playing a part. And we look forward to having a bit of fun next week. Stay safe. Enjoy whatever it is you're doing, and mate, take care.
And next week we'll talk about some popular Perth suburbs. Look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll put our little ad on. Take care, all right?